Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good luck if you've got your test coming up. Yeah, do let us know later on if you are. So we're looking at the task 1 today for the academic module. And specifically, we're going to look at a static chart today. Okay, so that's where there isn't a timeline with a line graph, but you have things like bar charts and pie charts. Okay. So we'll be having a look at the structure, we'll be having a look at some of the language that you need to use, okay? 14th of September, good luck guys, good luck. So just have a quick look at this chart here, this bar chart. And one of the most important things to do with all of the writing tasks, to be honest, with IELTS, is spend a little bit of time just looking at the question and making sure that you know exactly what they're talking about and exactly where we are. So, for example, you know, reading the question very carefully, looking at the timeline, looking at the title as well, that's going to help you. And also looking at the measurements. It's amazing how many people get the measurements wrong because they haven't looked very carefully there, okay? So just, you know, make sure you read that, that side very well, okay? And also, you know, the key, what exactly are they talking about? It's very easy to make a mistake in those things, okay? So just to practice that a little bit, we are going to look at some statements about the bar chart. Some of them are true and some of them are false, okay? So you've got to look very carefully to check that. And if you think, tell me if you think they're true or false, and if you think they're false, what do you think the correct information is, okay? Why are they false? So have a look at this one. It shows how many, the chart shows how many Australians traveled abroad, okay? With the timeline being 1992 to 2001, okay? Yeah, so red one says false. Everyone agree with that one? Yeah, okay, good. So why is that false? What's the correct information? Okay, good. Yes, okay. We're talking about people immigrating into Australia. We're not talking about Australians emigrating out of the country. Okay, so that's the first one. So what about this one? The number of workers immigrating into Australia between 1992 and 2001. What do you think? Got the timeline right? I think we got a plus. I've just realized that's yeah, true. Yes, okay, it's exactly that. It's so people immigrating into Australia and for work. Okay, so it's specifically people who are coming in for work. Okay, how about this one? Total number in 1992. About 54,000. Total number of immigrants. Okay, good. Why is it? Gonna give me a reason as well. Okay, so now it's false. Why is it false? Think about what it's saying and what we talked about at the beginning. Okay, the number, don't worry so much about the number. You're right, you're adding the two numbers together to get 54, but what are we talking about? What kind of immigrants? Oh, I think somebody's got it there. Yes, okay, very good. Sky for work, and yeah, Albara has got that as well. Okay, Yasmin, Katerina. Okay, so it's people who are coming here to work, okay? You've got to get this kind of information correct for it to be accurate, okay? And if you're looking for a band 7, you definitely need to be getting that kind of precise information. Okay. It's a trap. There's a lot of traps in IELTS. It's about being very specific and very careful. Yeah. Okay, 2 types of workers. Okay, yes. Okay, we've got people who are coming permanently, people who are coming just for a short period of time. Okay, so again, something you would want to put into your answer very clearly. Okay. 40% of workers who came to Australia, permanent settlers. Look at that very, very carefully. Very carefully. Remember what I was saying. Oh, okay, we've got a few answers. Okay, why is it false? Why is it false? What's incorrect? Okay, very good, Mohammed. Mohammed's there. We're not talking about percentages. Okay, yeah, very good. Usi. The unit is in thousands, okay, not in percentages. So again, very, very common. People make mistakes with the measurements. Make sure you've got, is it percentages? Is it thousands? Is it millions? Is it hundreds of thousands? You know, they do, I guess you're right, they do kind of try and trick you a little bit, you know, but you've got to be very careful with that. Yeah, you just have to look at what you can see. Yeah, look at the axes before you start writing and make sure that you've got that right. I would, you know, underline the measurement, to be honest, because I think that's probably the most common mistake that people make. Okay, so all right, the total number of foreign workers in Australia in 1995 was about 34,000. Again, think about this very carefully. The number that we're in, total number in Australia. Ooh, got a bit of a true or false. If you think it's false, tell me why you think it's false. Can we get some? Okay, we got loading. It is false. Okay, why is it false? Oh, yes, somebody, I'm sorry I missed your name because it went by so quickly. Yes, it's the inflow. Somebody said that. I'm really sorry I missed your name. It's not actually the people who are in Australia, but it's the people who arrived in Australia in that year. Okay, so again, I know these things seem small, but they can make quite a big difference to your score. So just be very careful that you are, yes it is, that you are getting exactly the right information. Okay, I would always underline those kind of words. It's the people coming to Australia, it's not the people in Australia. It's workers, it's not, you know, students, it's not general immigration, it's specifically immigration for work. Okay, so take a few minutes, underline some keywords there, make sure that what you're saying is absolutely 100% accurate. Okay, and particularly be careful with those measurements because that is a really common mistake. Okay, so oh, there's one more there. Just under 15,000 temporary foreign workers entered Australia in 1992. Okay, very good. So we've got everything here. We've got temporary, we've got foreign workers, we've got the entered. So it's the people actually coming in. So this is very accurate, very precise. Okay. And you can also see how, you know, we've got some different ways. So we've got inflow, we've got immigration, we've got entered. So you're starting to see some paraphrasing there as well, different ways to talk about the same thing. Okay. All right, and how about this one? So we've got a bit of a comparison here, looking at the last one. Which one was fewer, temporary or permanent? Okay, good. Yeah, okay, it's the wrong way round. So we've got a comparison, but they've mixed up the permanent and the temporary. Okay. All right, so we'll have a look at the same thing here quite briefly. This is the chart that we're going to work with today. Okay, so we're going to write a full model answer for this example. So again, just take a little bit of time, just have a look at the title, have a look at, or the, well, there's no axes here as such, but have a look at the measurements and just make sure you've got all of that information before we start working with it. Okay. So what measurement are we looking at in this case, as opposed to the one that we looked at before? Okay, good. So this is in percentages, okay? And the percentages come up quite a lot when you have these static charts that we're looking at, okay? Or proportions, Ekaterina. Nice bit of synonyms there, okay? And what time frame are we looking at? Okay, good. So we've got a specific year in the past that we are looking at, okay? And what are the categories? What are we looking, how are we dividing up? Yes, okay, we're talking about different countries or different continents, but we're looking at it by region or by location, okay? So that's the kind of thing that you need to be looking at. And again, we've got labor force, so we're looking at workers as well, okay? So do take that small amount of time just at the beginning to check that information, okay? So always the same structure for the academic task one, doesn't matter what type of task it is: introductory sentence, overview, and then your body, which always good if you can divide it up into 2 paragraphs. You know, it looks better, it's easier to read. You can also put the overview at the end if you want, that's totally fine. The most important thing is that you make it very clear that it's the overview by putting it in a separate paragraph. That is really, really important, okay? Introduction and overview tend to be very short, 1 or 2 sentences, whereas the body paragraphs, that's where most of your 150 words are, okay? So let's go through those different parts one by one and see what we need to do, okay? So generally, your introductory sentence is going to be a paraphrase of the task question, okay? So it's the same information, but if you just write it out as it is, 2 problems with that. Firstly, it doesn't get counted in the word count. So you may think you've written 150 words, but actually maybe you haven't, because they're not counting your introductory sentence. And also it doesn't show that you have a good range of vocabulary to use, okay? They will think, depending on the words in the task. So remember, you've got to show a good range of vocabulary. That doesn't mean that you have to spend, you know, hours trying to think of a way of saying Australia, okay? You don't have to paraphrase everything. As long as you're paraphrasing some of those words, that's going to be the most important thing. So that's also important. Paraphrasing synonyms, yes, very important, but not if you're going to end up using something quite awkward or strange, because there isn't really a natural synonym or a natural paraphrase for you to use, okay? Keep it very, very short and very clear, the introductory sentence. Don't just list everything. You know, you can talk about the categories as a whole. You don't have to list all of them. You could, however, if you are low on the word count, you can add in the names of all of the countries, and that might give you a little bit extra. It's a question of word count versus timing on that one. So if we have a look at this one, which words do you think in that title, whoops, are good words to paraphrase or to give synonyms for? Oh, Dr. Bindi is already, yeah, okay, shows, chart, definitely. Okay, yes, we can talk about immigrants as well. A proportion, very nice. Yeah, proportion works very well. Yeah, and I think the geographical area, that's something that we can look at as well. Yeah. So instead of saying the chart, which is rather general, we can say the pie chart. Okay. Instead of shows, okay, I think we've already had illustrates, haven't we? Illustrates, depicts, very nice. That's really good. Okay. So we've gone for illustrates, provides information on is also fine. Yeah. So then we're going to paraphrase proportion. Okay, very good, Mohammed. Percentage and Neo, that works very well. Okay. And then we're going to look at, so here we've got immigrants and then we've got working, and we've kind of split them up a little bit. So other ways that we could talk about immigrants and working. Okay, very nice, Sky and Mohammed, foreign workers, foreign labor force. Yeah, remember you got to keep that workers in there. Okay, so that's important to include as well. We've gone for workforce, which is another way of saying labor force, but that works well too. Okay. And then here we've got a kind of vague from various regions and countries. So what would be a way of saying that slightly differently? From different, okay, so different instead of various, that works well, or from several continents, several nationalities. Okay, that works very well. We've gone for 6 different regions, okay. But you could put that geographical regions, Priyusha, that's fine as well. In Australia in 1991, do we want to paraphrase that? No, exactly. It's really not important. There isn't any way of doing that, okay? That wouldn't require a huge amount of effort and work, all right? So you've shown there that you've got paraphrasing, you've got a good range of vocabulary that you can use. You've also changed the sentence structure a little bit, you know, so that's also showing that you are able to manipulate the language to a certain extent, okay? And that's it, that's your introduction, you know, 1 sentence, perfectly fine. You don't really want to be wasting time on that. You just want to get that information down very clearly, but without using the words that are in the task question. Okay, then we come to the overview. Now this is really, really important, okay? If you're looking at getting a band 7 or above, one thing is they say a clear overview. So that means that it's in a separate paragraph, that you're beginning with a linking word, which shows that it is an overview, and that you make a very clear distinction between the main trends, which you put in the overview, and the detail, which you put in the body. Okay, so remember that that's really important. There's a very clear separation of overall trends and details and specifics. If they seem a little bit mixed up in any way, you know, you're definitely going to be under a 7 for task achievement. So be very careful about that. Okay, so again, as I said, the key features, main trends, overall patterns. Generally, the highest or lowest figure is probably something that you are going to include. Also, any similar pattern. Yeah, so it's something going, you know, on the line graph, it can be what's going up, what has an upward trend, what has a downward trend. Here, you know, it can be the size, the largest and the smallest figures. Exactly right, Chetan. So again, you know, before you start writing, a couple of minutes or 1 minute, very quick, just take a quick look and think about how can I divide this up? What is the most important information here? And how am I going to put that across clearly? Okay, so we'll have a look at that now. So if we look at the majority, where are the majority of the immigrants from? Okay, good. So, you know, that's a very big majority there. That's clearly something that you're going to need to put in the overview. Okay. And then we have one other country, one other area, which is quite significant. Yeah, okay, so then Asia and, well, you could also say New Zealand as well. They're definitely larger than the others. And then we have the other three. So we got 4%, 3%, 5%, basically more or less the same. So you can think of those as one group, which is very low. Okay, so we've divided them up into three groups there for our overview. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So how do we start the overview? Okay, very good, Mohammed. So there then, yeah, overall. Okay, just put overall, don't think about it. No need to put anything else. That's all you need to put, okay? And again, it makes it very clear that this is the overview just right away, okay? Then it's very good to have one of these reporting phrases. You can also put them in the body as well. Okay, very good. It's clear, Mohammed, or evident, Monica, those kind of things. I would say, yeah, evident. Obvious sounds a little bit informal to me, I think. So I would stick with clear or evident, okay? So, and then what are we going to say? So we're talking about Europe first, just as we've done it at the side there. Okay, very good, Monica. The majority come from Europe. Okay, so that's our key point, our key trend that we have there. Okay, and then Asians and New Zealanders. So now we're using the nationality. So again, manipulating the language a little bit, make up a significant, okay, yeah, percentage works well. Proportion would work well. Part would also work well, yeah. Share, Katerina. I love chunk of the pie, Chirag, but it's too informal, okay? Likewise, percentage-wise is a little bit informal, although it's a fantastic use of the language, not quite formal enough, okay? All right, and then we're going to compare that to everywhere else. So to compare, okay, very good, Tamana, while, okay. So we've got the comparison there between the significant percentage and the low percentage. And notice we're not naming those other places, we're just putting that together in a kind of lump of other regions, because we don't want to go into too much detail when it comes to the overview. Okay, so again, that's two sentences. You're not really going to need to put in anything more than that. Description of, whereas would work as well, sort of. You know, it's the overall idea. We don't have any detail in there. We don't have any figures in there. Very, very important, okay? And we're just talking very generally in terms of what we can see, okay? So if you think about it, if you could only talk about this pie chart in one sentence, what would you say? What would you pick out? That's the most important way of thinking about it, okay? So now we come to the body paragraphs. Actually, before we do that, just to go back to the overview, it's just a description of the trends, okay? There's no analysis, there's no opinion, there's no interpretation. You'll lose a lot of marks if you do that, okay? It's not a conclusion, it's an overview. Very, very different, okay? So just remember that it's still just a description in the overview. Okay, so now we want to look at the body. So we're going to put all of our detail here, and we're going to put all of our figures here, okay? Very specific figures. So we need to think about how we could divide it up, okay? It's got to be very clear, very logical, Okay, the examiner wants to be able to read through your answer very quickly and understand everything immediately. Okay, if they go back, you know, and they have to go, I didn't quite get that, and I'm going to need to read that again, it's not going to go well. Okay, so very clear, which means that you need to link everything very clearly. There's also different ways that you can do it. We'll look at that in a minute. So there's not just one specific way, which is the best way, but choose an approach and stick to that approach. Okay, the worst thing is to begin with one approach and then switch in the middle, and then you start talking about it in a different way. It's very, very confusing. Going back to talk about something that you talked about at the beginning of the body, again, very, very confusing. So just work through it step by step, very clearly, choose your approach and stick to it. Okay. And, you know, the most logical way of doing it is grouping it into patterns. Okay. What's the key feature, and putting those together into different groups. Okay. So, and Kit is already with us. So what kinds of approaches could you use? If you think about 2 body paragraphs, how could you divide up this information? So I think Ankit's got one. You could start with the largest. So have one paragraph with the large numbers, yeah, or the highest numbers, and then one paragraph with the lower numbers. So that's a very good way of dividing it up. Okay, so you start from the highest and you work all the way down to the lowest. Okay, so we can see here that's a clear division into 2 sections, the significant ones and the ones that aren't. Any other approaches you can think of different to that one? Okay, very good, Takeshi. That would be the other way of doing it. So you could have, you know, the key places, so maybe the highest and the lowest in one paragraph, and then everything in the middle in the second paragraph. So you're picking out the highest and the lowest as being the most important ones. Okay. In this case, that probably doesn't make much sense because you've got 3 that are all low. Yeah. So what we're going with is the significant numbers and then the not particularly significant numbers. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So just a little bit of advice before we start. In some of these, for example, in some of the tables that you can get a lot of numbers. Okay, really a lot of numbers. In that case, you've really got to be selective. You don't want to just be listing lots of figures. Okay, that's just mechanical reporting. That will only get you a 5. Okay, so if you have a lot of figures, then be quite selective. Try and group things together. Try and look for common trends, but you don't need to list and you don't need to include all of those numbers there. Okay. But you do need to include specific data. Okay, so when you do talk about any kind of category, you've got to give that figure very clearly. Again, if you don't have any data to support your description, maximum of a 5 in task achievement. Okay, makes it very hard to get over a 7, even if everything else is very good. Okay. And as we said, logical organization, so that means lots of linking words, making it very clear when you're moving from one area to the next. Okay, so let's have a look at these in more detail. So as I said at the beginning, very common that you get percentages with these bar charts and pie charts. It's very easy to write the percentage. It doesn't actually require any language skill at all. So in order to show your manipulation of the language, show your range of vocabulary, you want to use fractions, you want to use ratios, other ways of talking about things. So we've got some of the more obvious percentages, if I can put it that way. And we're going to find other ways to talk about it. So a tenth would be the same as 10%, very good, or the first one, yeah. Okay, 1 in 5 would be, okay, yeah, 20%. Oh, we've also got, Alan's got the fraction as well. A third, okay, very good, 33%. 3 out of 4. Okay, is 75%. Okay, just over 60%. Okay, very good. 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3. Okay, a bit of maths here. 1 out of 3 is a third, or 33%. A quarter would be 25%. Okay, 2/3 would be 66%. Notice it does have the S on the thirds. Again, quite a common mistake I've seen, people missing the S off. Okay, 1 in 4. Okay, good. Again, 25%, or a quarter. And 3/4. Okay, very good. 75%. Next one would be, okay, very good. Then we have a fifth. Somebody mentioned that earlier on. Okay, very good. 20%. And then you could also say just over 30%. Okay, very good. And finally, 1 in 10. Okay, perfect. So if you do get percentages, and this might also be the line graph as well, that could equally be in percentages, do try and put some of those figures as fractions, or maybe as ratios, like 1 in 10 or 1 in 5. Fractions you can use with everything. Ratios you can only use with countable nouns, so you're always safe with fractions. And as we see in the last row there, you know, you don't even have to make it exact, using just over, nearly, almost. So, you know, if it's 23%, nearly a quarter, 21%, just over a fifth. So, you know, use those a lot, and that's going to show that you've really got a good command of the language. Okay, equally, don't, you know, it's not a maths lesson. You don't have to spend ages trying to work percentages out, but if it's close to a quarter or half or 3/4, it's going to look much better if you express it that way. Okay, so what we've got here is now we're going to go through the body paragraphs. So this is our body paragraph A. And we've done that, we've written it out for you, but we've got some missing words which are down the side there. So you can see we've got lots of fractions there. We're using all fractions. So now we're going to go through. Yeah, so we're already there for the first one. Yeah, the majority of foreign workers. And then we're going into a little bit more detail. So in fact, nearly, and we want to have, okay, very good, nearly 2/3. Okay, we're just under 66% there, so nearly 2/3. So again, we're backing up our information with the exact figures. Okay, then we're going to move down. Okay, very good. So the second largest group, very logical order there from the largest to the smallest. Okay, so that's the Asians. Asians represented just under, okay, very good, a fifth, so 17%, just under 20%. Then we go down to the next one. So New Zealanders, who made up almost, okay, a tenth of the workforce in that year, were what? What's left? Well, we've only got one left, haven't we? The third largest group. Okay, so you can see how the logic is there in the order. Okay, we're going to look a little bit at the language here as well. So what tense are we using in this case? Okay, very good. Past simple. We got 1 year, 1991 in the past. There's no other tense that you can use in this case. Okay, so, but again, do make sure you use the right tense, and do make sure that you're consistent with the tense, because a lot of times people kind of move about between different tenses. So just stick with that past simple there. Okay. We can use were for the figures, but that's quite basic. So what other words have we got here to describe the figures? Okay, a verb that we use to give the proportion. Okay, very good, Sajidin. So we got represented. What else have we got there? Made up. Yeah, okay, represented, made up. Accounted for is another one you can use. Yeah, comprised works as well. That's very good. Yeah, accounted for, amounted to is another one. So again, you know it's IELTS, you've got to vary your language. So use lots of different verbs to talk about those figures, okay? And what kind of approximate language can you see there? Okay, good. We've got nearly, yeah, we've got just under, we've got almost. Okay, Talu, approximately works as well. That's very good. Yeah, close to, around, roughly. So do use that approximate language. It's good use of language. It adds to your word count as well. And you know, it shows a good awareness of the language. Okay. So that is our first body paragraph. So with the three bigger figures, so we've got a very clear distinction here between the three bigger figures and the three smaller figures. Okay, so same thing here. Now we're going down to those three very, very small percentages at the end. Okay, so what fits into the last gap? Okay, good, was much smaller. Okay, so then we look at North Africa and the Middle East. It was only, okay, good, 4%. So you can't really use that as a fraction. I mean, you can, but it's more effort than necessary. So if they're very, very small percentages, you just keep them as the small percentages, okay? Then we move on to the next one, number 3. Okay, very good. So the smallest was the Americans, and they represented just 3%. Okay, so again, you know, we're not converting those very small percentages. It's just not necessary. Okay. And again, let's have a look at some of the language. So to compare, we're comparing the large numbers with the small numbers. So what kind of, yeah, okay, very good, Mohammed. So we've got smaller. Yeah, so using a comparison is very important. Superlatives, if we're going down to the lowest one, yeah, so the smallest nationality group. So lots of comparison expressions is very important here. That's right, Talu, the superlative. So comparatives, superlatives, other expressions for comparing different figures works very well here, okay? And with those very small percentages, what can we use? So, okay, very good. Only, yeah, just, merely. So those kind of words work very well when you've got a very small number that you're using, okay? And again, we've also used lots of different expressions for the workers. So we've got labor force, we've got workforce, we've got workers from other countries, we've got foreign workers. So again, changing up the language a little bit so that we're not always repeating the same one. Yeah, okay, much smaller works very well, Sweater, that's fine. Yeah, merely. So if we look here, we have our full answer. So we have our introductory sentence, very short. We have our overview, main trends, no details, no figures. Then we have our body, which has all of the details, all of the exact data in it, organized in a logical way that's very easy for the everyone always asks what band it is. Very easy for the examiner to follow. Okay, so yes, it would certainly be a 9. Yeah, it's written by examiners. So there's some of the key information there. Remember, first of all, identify the measurements and the key features. Introductory sentence. You want to paraphrase the question, some of the words in the question, not everything. Overview, very, very important that it's clear, so a separate paragraph. Then a logical arrangement for the rest of the body. And if it's in percentages, try and use some kind of other words there for some of those percentages. Okay. And you need to also use that kind of comparative language as well. Okay, so that's your answer.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much, Annelie. That was a great presentation. I hope you guys found that helpful. And yeah, some very nice answers as well. So well done, everyone. Well done. Now, we are going to have some time to discuss your questions. So if you do have any general questions about IELTS, the writing we've looked at, or any other aspect of the test, if you'd like to add them to the Q&A function just now, if you can write them into the Q&A, we'll have some time to discuss your questions then. So it's lovely to hear your feedback, guys. That's really nice. Thank you. I'm glad it was helpful. Before we look at your questions, I would just like to let you know about our premium services, which we offer on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. We offer for writing a writing evaluation service where you can submit your writing to our website. One of our team of examiners will go through your writing. They'll make any corrections that are needed, and they'll give you a band score for each criteria. So it's very detailed feedback on your performance. And this kind of feedback can help you to improve your writing and hopefully get the score you need. So that's a service we offer on our website. We offer a similar service as well for speaking, where you can book a mock test with a speaking examiner. We'll go through a full test with you from start to finish, then give you feedback on your performance as well as a written report afterwards. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out on our website. We also have some courses for listening and reading, a series of video lessons that are explanations of the different tests on our website. So if you are interested in improving your reading or listening, you can learn different strategies that you can use for each question type, different tips that you can use to help hopefully improve your score in the test. I've put the links to that in the chat, so please check that out if you'd like. So I think, Annelie, we can take a look at some of these questions that are pouring in. So we've got a question here from Mohammed. Mohammed is asking, do we need to write numbers as words, or can we write them as numbers?
Yeah, so if they're large numbers, then definitely write them as figures. Otherwise, it's going to take you a very long time to write it out. You can write them always as figures, but with the smaller numbers, sometimes like just 3 and 4 and 10, we do write it out as words. But I definitely wouldn't do that with the large numbers, and it's perfectly okay to use figures rather than words for all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Feda, feel free to ask us a question. If you can put it into the Q&A, that will help keep things fair. Okay, any questions you have, add them to the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to them. So let's see, we have a question here from Delia. If there is a pie chart in the year 1990 and a second pie chart in the year 2000, is that a static or a dynamic chart? That's a pretty good question.
That's a pretty good choice. What I would do is describe, separate them out, describe the chart from 1990, okay, and then describe the chart from 2000. And then in your overview, make a comparison between those two charts. So what has, which numbers have risen and which numbers have decreased. Maybe some things have stayed the same. But within the body, you would be better off treating each one as you know, a separate static chart. Okay, compare in the overview.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of questions here. One from Ada about, oh, am I here?
Yes, you're here.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Something I thought the Zoom had crashed for a second. It doesn't want to open, but okay. The questions have disappeared. Ada's question was about a process. Can we discuss describing a process? It's a common task one question type. Ada, we do have a description of that available on our YouTube channel. I've put the link to that in the chat. So you can check out the recording. We'll have another session coming up soon. And Ankit, your question, what is the date of our next webinar? If you go to the webinar link that I've put in the chat, you'll be able to see all of our upcoming webinars. Okay, so a question from Wong. This is a bit of a tricky question, Annelie, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you.
How much time should people spend to prepare for the IELTS test, generally speaking?
Wow, that is a tricky question. It really depends where you are currently and where you need to be, which varies hugely for each individual. So the most important thing to do first is to find out where you are, so that you know whether you need to, you know, you need a certain amount of time to work on it, or if perhaps maybe, you know, you're already where you need to be. So finding that out is really the most important information, but there's no set figure because, you know, there's a whole range of possibilities out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Wong, it's where you are is about which level you're currently at. What's your current level of English? Where are your strengths and weaknesses? And, you know, what do you need to increase a band score? So, yeah, that's really how the only way you can answer that question, if you have a good understanding of your current level. That is something that our speaking and writing evaluation can help you to understand as well. So it might be worth considering, and then that can help you to plan your study based on that. I can see, hello, the link is not working. Let me check.
People have said that. Yeah.
Yep, I'll try and get the working link for you.
There's a couple of questions. Can I just answer a couple of questions I saw in chat? I think they're very important. It's basically where you get two charts, could possibly be two pie charts, or they could be like a pie chart and a bar chart. Basically, you want to treat them as two separate things, okay? So you will, for example, describe the pie chart first in exactly the same way as we have done here. Then in a separate paragraph, you will describe the second chart. And it's always very good to start that second paragraph with something like turning now to the bar chart. So it's very clear to the examiner, again, what you're doing, and then describe that information in the second body paragraph. So keep them separate and make that, where you turn from one to the other, make that very clear by using a linking phrase, okay? But don't try and compare them. It'll just end up, you know, leading to confusion.
Yeah, Absolutely. We have a session on comparing two charts as well. So you might like to check that out on our YouTube channel too. Thanks so much for that, Shubham. That is the correct link. The name for the webinars has changed. It's now Live Lessons. So it's available same place on our website, just the link is different. We'll update that as well. Let me see, a few more questions. You'll be able to watch the video on our YouTube channel from tomorrow. Okay, so even if you can't record it, you'll be able to watch. It should be up on our YouTube channel tomorrow. Okay, question. There's been a couple of questions. This one is from Mohammed. What is the difference between a static chart and a dynamic one? And what's the difference in the language that we'll need to use?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the main difference with these charts is sometimes you have a timeline. So if you remember the one that we looked at right at the beginning where we were doing the true false, we had 1991 to 2001. That's often a line graph, but it's not necessarily, could be bar charts, could be a table. So you do have to look very carefully for that timeline. If there is a timeline, then you're going to be using graph language, which is things like, you know, rose sharply, fell steeply, remained the same, plateaued, all, you know, hit a peak, that kind of language. So that's what you're going to be looking at for the dynamic charts. Okay, that means there's a timeline. The static charts, there's no timeline, it's just one specific year, or possibly there's no year at all. And in that case, the language that you need to be focusing on is comparison language, language for comparing the different categories, and different ways of expressing percentages usually as well. So the first thing you need to do is check, is there a timeline? Okay, yes, that's my graph vocabulary. No, okay, that's my comparison vocabulary.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Regulo, for that feedback. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you, Michaela, for answering a question about the computer-based test. We do have a question here about the computer-delivered IELTS versus the paper-based. Mm-hmm. Which one is more convenient? What would you suggest, Annelie?
I think it's really a personal choice, you know. I mean, there's so much of that depends on how much you're used to using a computer, how you feel about having things up on a screen. You know, really do preparation, find out what works for you best. The computer-based test is not offered everywhere. It's less frequently offered than the paper-based, so you would want to check at your local centre if you're interested in doing the computer-based test and make sure that it is available, because it might not be. But you know, if both of them are available, then you know, it's a personal choice. I would always go with paper. Yeah. Because I'm old, but a lot of younger people would go for computer-based. So, okay. You know, how can you say?
Yeah, that makes me feel good. I personally, I would go for the computer one. Feel more comfortable typing. The fact that you get a word count as well for the writing, it helps you keep track of the words. My handwriting is really not very good because I do so much work on the computer. Personally, I would be more comfortable doing the computer-based, but yeah, as you say, Annelie, it's entirely personal preference. Mm-hmm. So yeah, best of luck, Tamana. Let us know how you get on, okay, with your test. If you, if it doesn't, let us know how you go on. But best of luck. I'm sure you'll be grand. All right. Let's see. I think we have time for a couple more questions. This is a similar question from Chaitra, who is asking about the paper-based writing. Mm-hmm. What's a good way to keep track of the word count?
Best way to keep track of the word count is practice in your own handwriting. not typing, you can actually download sample answer sheets for the IELTS writing to practice on, and then, you know, make sure you know what 150, 160 words looks like in your handwriting, what 250, 260 words looks like in your handwriting, and then you should be able to see that you've written enough in the test without counting the words. So count the words in the practice, in the preparation, and then you shouldn't need to do it in the actual test.
Yeah, definitely. And Anonymous, you're asking about, will we make a lesson with writing with maps for task 1, describing a map? We definitely will. We have had some lessons before on our YouTube channel, so you can watch them to review, and we will be having another one coming up soon. So yeah, watch out for that. Let's see. Guys, I'm afraid that is all we're going to have time for today. So we'll wrap up there. Apologies if we didn't answer your questions. Okay, you can ask any questions you like via our YouTube channel. If you'd like to post them as comments, we do check them and we'll do our best to answer your questions. So yeah, you can get in touch with us via YouTube channel or via Facebook as well. And can see some of you have your exams coming up in 2 days. So yes, best of luck to you. I'm sure you'll do great. Okay. So excellent. I think we can wrap up there. So I just want to say a very big thank you to Annelie for presenting today. Thank you, Annelie.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. Good luck if you got your test on Saturday. Thinking of you.
Definitely. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully, we'll see you again in another webinar soon. So have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Annelie. Bye for now.
See you, Jamie. Bye. Bye, guys.